Hi everybody, my name is Amira and welcome to my YouTube video. So I get a lot of questions about modeling and medicine, and I thought instead of DMing each individual person, I'll just make a channel, and if you're interested, you can learn a little bit about me and my path to medicine and modeling. So I think the first thing is just to kind of quickly tell you a bit about how I got into modeling and medicine. So from a very young age, I've always been really interested in science, and I knew I wanted to be a doctor, not really sure what kind, but whatever. I just thought, okay, let's get into the sciences, let's get this figured out. And then through multiple trials and tribulations, which I'll definitely talk about on a different video, I finally got into medical school. Now, in the States and in Canada, medical school is quite expensive, and I come from pretty humble beginnings. So for me, I thought, okay, how am I going to save up $200,000 to $250,000 for medical school, which is the approximate cost when you include things like rent and books and traveling, etc., etc. So from a very young age, I've always been this like lanky, skinny person that people used to call Skeletor. And in high school, I was super, like, I wasn't very popular or kind of like what everyone else kind of assumes, but it's not true. So I was told, being from of Indian background that, maybe I should try modeling. Now, there are some cultural, I guess, situations in my family and in my upbringings where modeling is not really something that's supported. So I did think about this a lot when I decided to start. And in the end, which I'll talk about in another channel when I talk about modeling, I decided to do it kind of on the DL or down low. And so the way I was scouted, which is one of the most common questions, is actually when I was in Ottawa, which is where I went to medical school in Canada, and I went to a fashion show. So I thought, okay, I'll go to a fashion show. There's got to be some scouts there, right? Like, I don't know. I felt like it was a bit of a higher chance compared to just like walking down the street and someone just spotting me, especially because I'm 99% of the time in sweats and hair in a bun with glasses. So anyways, I wore like my cutest, chicest outfit. I didn't wear glasses and I did my makeup and made sure like my hair was in a tight bun so all my features were exposed. And I just went to the fashion show. And what I did is after, I kind of stood by where the entrances for models are. And I asked a couple of them, hey, like, is your scout here or is your agent here? And a lot of the times, for bigger fashion shows, agencies will come and one of them was like, yeah, actually my agent's right there. Anyway, so I ended up just kind of introducing myself at that time, and she really liked, I think, my personality, and I think that's a huge part of modeling is there's many beautiful girls with different features, different looks, but personality plays a huge role in terms of getting you noticed and having you remembered. So that's how I kind of started. And so initially I started kind of locally, and then with time I built up my portfolio. People got to know me, different clients, and then I went to different agencies across Canada and ultimately a couple internationally as well. And that's how it grew from then. Now, in terms of medicine, which is very interesting, I knew that whatever medical school I decided to go to at the time, that it would require some sort of flexibility because I knew I was going to be modeling, as well as whether it wasn't modeling because I didn't know at the time what I was going to be doing, then I would need some like part-time job or something like that. So the med school that I chose in the end was awesome for me because how it worked was we had classes in the morning and they were not mandatory. They were all videoed and saved, so I could watch them at a later time and date. And then we only had like a couple days a week that were mandatory full-time. So what that allowed me to do is really schedule my life around both medicine and modeling. I think the most important tip for me when balancing two different careers is like, at the end of the day, you need to decide what's your number one. If you have two things facing you and you have to make a decision, like, Are you going to be a doctor? Or are you going to be a model? What is your end goal? And I think that was really important for me to reflect on before I decided to pursue two paths, because there were many circumstances where, I may have missed a job that would have brought me really far ahead in modeling, or would have been really awesome for my portfolio, but I knew in the end it would have been sacrificing something from becoming a doctor. So before you kind of go in with two careers, although you can do both, you do have to decide, if you're faced with the decision of one versus the other, what's the ultimate decision you're going to make? And for me, that was medicine. For other people, that can be different. And it's definitely a personal decision. So that was the first thing, was deciding, number one, which job was ultimately the one that I was going to choose. Number two, as I mentioned, I picked a medical school that was quite flexible. The hours were random, and I could kind of watch lectures later on versus, earlier on. And then the next thing I think is important is having a very, time-based organization schedule. Now, for me, that was, organizing in such a way where I had, an agenda, super old school, but 10 years ago, that was kind of what we did. And I would just say, okay, this is my time. This is the time I'm not going to be going to med school class, but because I have a job, but this is the new time that I'm blocking off to make sure that, I'm making up for what I've missed. Because I think, with number one being you have to pick both, you don't want to kind of be bad at both, right? So there definitely was opportunity for me to go to a job for modeling, but really quickly you can see if I missed 6 hours of class and I didn't make that up later, I would fall behind by 6 hours, and then 6 hours again, 6 hours again. So it's really easy to fall behind. So I think for me, at least, having that schedule and being honest with myself about keeping on track was very, very important. So that was my number three, was if I was going to miss, whether it was med school or modeling, I had time in my schedule blocked off in my free time to make that up. So that is a piece of advice that, you really have to think about before you decide any two careers. I think you only have fixed amount of time in your life, and you can't just make time up, which would be awesome. And I wish I could be like some kind of scientist that would create free time, but you can't, right? You only have 24 hours a day, but you can't. You only have 24 hours a day, and you only have so much free time in your life. And so for anybody who is looking into balancing anything, you have to say, okay, I'm okay to pursue these two careers or these two passions of mine, knowing that something's going to suffer. For me, it was probably, the amount of time I spent with my family. I didn't go back to visit them in my hometown as many weekends as I would have. And looking back at that, I have a really strong family relationships. So whether that was me FaceTiming them on the weekends or at night rather than going back to visit, I had to definitely be creative as to how I was going to juggle around other important things in my life in order to make that work. So that was number three, was scheduling. Number four, figure out your priorities. So as I mentioned, medicine was number one, modeling was number two. I was also in a relationship at the time, and then I also had my family. So those were my big number four things. And then number five is hobbies and things that I enjoy doing. So I always made time for numbers 3 and 4. And the way I viewed modeling was that it was also kind of a hobby. I would say, having been somebody who's actually experienced both, I've been in med school, I've done residency, I've done 24-hour, 36-hour call, I've been at the brink of patients passing away, really hard mental stuff. I have to say, modeling is also incredibly hard. And I think that was one of the most difficult things for me, is trying to justify or to explain to people oh, modeling, that's so easy. It must be such a break. It's such a hobby. It's so chill. But yeah, I enjoyed it. So it did take up my hobby time, but at the same time, it is hard. And so I think before, people have these misconceptions and prejudgments of what that job looks like. I think it's important that they talk to someone who actually does it, because having been somebody who can objectively say, I've been both, I am a doctor and I'm also a model, can be, actually not in all scenarios, but can be equally exhausting, standing, doing like being on your best behavior 12 hours a day, cameras on you, having energy, creativity, thinking outside the box, working in a team, having people like those are just some of the things that are involved in modeling, and people don't realize that. And so I think that was one of the things I had to like check for myself, being okay with modeling taking up my free time and my hobby free time. I guess I'm like kind of babbling. So modeling taking up that facet of my life of being kind of a hobby as well was okay. With some people, if you're like, I don't know, involved in competitive sports, or if you're, like a huge cook or something else that you have as a hobby, it can be difficult because you have multiple passions and there's only so much time in your hands. So, I think that was another way I learned to balance things. And I think if I had to say one of the most important parts, so this would probably be number 5, is open communication with both sides. So I think from a modeling perspective, there's, as I mentioned with clients, there's many beautiful faces, many unique looks, and building a relationship with the client and your modeling agency is so important, because I'm super lucky. My agency is Elite Toronto and I've been with them for 10 years now, and they understand. I say, look, I have to be in surgery for this, like when I was in my residency, or I know for sure I'm not available these times, or you know what, I know I'm post-call, which just means I'm off the next day for these hours. And having that open communication with my agency was so important, and really what got me to where I am today from a modeling perspective. I think they were super understanding, tried their best to accommodate, tried to give me as much notice as I could so I could get people to cover me if I needed to leave. That was really important. And then from the medical side, I would say be ready to know that there is no flexibility from like when you're in your internship years, which is year 3 and 4, and no flexibility when you're a resident, because you're kind of a part of the hospital, and it's a requirement to get in those hours, and that's just kind of the way you're in a team. Your hours are fixed. There isn't that flexibility. But now that I'm a staff doctor, I know, okay, I have control of my schedule, and because of that, I found now modeling has been a bigger part of my life than it was for a few years in between when I was a resident, like interning and a resident in medicine. And I personally, for example, I actually purposely don't work 1.5 days a week in my like private practice, because I leave that open for modeling. Anyone who knows about modeling knows that, you're not able to say, oh, for sure I'm going to have a job with this week, or for sure I'm not going to have a job that week. But allowing that flexibility so my agency can work with clients that I've built relationships with over the last 10 years and say, look, Amira can work Friday from this time to this time, Wednesday mornings, or whatever hours I have available. And it's made such a difference, because it allows clients to really like work around our schedules, and we all work together. And if they know a year in advance, like this is when I'm always available, it allows for us to have like a very great relationship. And so that was the last piece, is like very open communication has helped me a lot in balancing these two careers. So I hope that's helped somebody out there in the world if they want to balance 2 careers, whether it's modeling and medicine, or it can be any other ones that you're interested in, other arts, painting, whatever it is that might not be conventional. But I just wanted to put it out there that it's possible, that anything is possible. You just have to be strategic and planning and thoughtful about what you're doing. And so, I hope that this inspires somebody out there to do, if they're in a position where they have to make a decision soon. But ultimately, yeah, that's how it went down. And, hopefully this channel is useful for you, and I'll make some more videos. more detail because this has already gone on longer than I thought it was gonna be. I was like, how am I gonna talk for 10 minutes? And now it's been like 15. So subscribe, I guess, and then more will come out.